Hey there, Michael here, and
Melanie.
with the Reason RX podcast. As we've discussed in episode one, you can listen to our qualifications there. If you haven't, we introduce ourselves, but briefly, I'm a private tutor, Michael here, of course, in Houston, Texas. I take students in math, physics, chemistry, SAT, ACT, work on logic, all ages. So, child or adult, someone wants to work on thinking skills, I can help. And Melanie.
Yeah, I'm in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and I have a private music studio where I teach various instruments and a lot of music theory. So, yeah, that's what I do.
And has students who win state championships.
That's right. That's true.
And so today we're talking to Danny Clark of MovNat. I don't know if you've heard that, but we'll post some links in the show notes. You can see some videos on YouTube. Go to their website, look at some videos, read a description of what it is. Um, we want to talk about something like this. This is very important for all human beings, for every learner and thinker, because thinking is not in a vacuum. We are animals, we move, we think in a context. Um, Movement exercise is not merely for vanity, but it's essential to our survival and to being a good human being. It helps us think better, and there's a plethora of evidence out there for that. We'll talk to Danny about some of that, but there's other books like Dr. John Rady, who wrote a book called Spark. He gets into that a great deal. And I know from my own personal experience that this works, especially the MovNat, because it's, as we'll learn from Danny, about more complicated movement. He can talk more about how that helps people at work, children in school, every human being, not merely be a better mover, but be a better thinker and process things better. Sorry, I got carried away there, Melanie. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm really excited to hear what he has to say about a few things. I've got a couple questions. I know you do too, that he can maybe elaborate on and kind of give us some information. That'd be great.
Cool. All right. So, Danny, would you like to say hi, please?
Yeah. Hello, and thank you, Michael and Melanie, for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
You're
Yeah, we're
welcome.
glad to have you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But so first of all, for the listeners, um, could you tell us about yourself, like your background, education, experience, stuff you do, so they know your qualifications and all that?
Yeah, of course. So currently, again, I am I'm the curriculum director for MovNat. I teach for the company. I teach and lead certifications and generally oversee the curriculum, and I also help run the company. Um, but that's now what got me here. Of course, it's a long story, but the short of it is I started wrestling at a very young age. Got me into a good school, went to University of Virginia and studied biology and archaeology. So, and the biology was very, very focused on evolutionary biology, ecology, anthropology. So, I was always really interested in evolutionary biology and especially human evolution. And at the end of my college career, it was kind of this transition point where I didn't really know what I was gonna do with that education per se. It was just purely out of interest. I didn't really see myself sitting in a research lab, studying microbiology and analyzing chemicals. I knew something that was really fundamental about myself was being physical. It just made me feel very alive, very engaged with my world and with others and with myself. So I decided to continue that route. Just I don't know. I guess you can call it kind of following my inner wisdom. It really felt like the right path for me. So I just became a personal trainer and started helping people through the toolkit I had at that time embrace physicality. Because there's so many people that are just, for whatever reason, for many very understandable reasons, the way our culture is set up, are living very sedentary lives and really haven't built positive neural pathways around movement. because it's a long history. It's a multifaceted type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to introduce them to that.
Good. Thank you.
And so, yeah, right. And it was very rewarding. But the thing is, my toolkit at that time just was very limited. It was very based in exercise science and especially sports science, because I was a wrestler and that's what I was used to. My mentors were all sports scientists, really special, stemming from especially like the Soviet sports science of structure and periodization and adaptation to loads to get somebody stronger. And so that's what I did. I focused mostly on the best quality movement I could teach, but really focused on the physiological adaptations, like getting stronger or more conditions that help people feel a little closer to being physical and just feel better in general, lose weight, lose body fat, whatever their goals were. And I quickly just realized that my toolkit was kind of limited because there was two things going on. One was the toolkit was limited, and second, philosophically, I knew that just helping people lose some body fat was not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was working at a Gold's Gym, and that's the primary reason why people come, is to look better and burn a little body fat. And so I was on this quest to find something that really resonated with me philosophically, and I still had to discover what that was. And I wanted to increase my toolkit to help people who wanted to move better, because just pure strength and conditioning it was like, hitting the issue with a hammer. Either it made you a lot better and kind of worked, or it just destroyed you, because just loading a body that's not in good, in physical, not just physical shape, but is very either uncoordinated or has a lot of joint issues and dysfunctions, just doesn't work very well. They end up, hurt. And this becomes a common theme right now, which is exercise is now as much of a risk factor for injury as being sedentary. So all this sort of brought me to MovNat, which we can get into more, I'm sure we will, but that's sort of the short version of what happened. And interestingly, MovNat is right where physicality meets human evolution. And that's really fascinating to me. I didn't really directly seek it out. It found me in a lot ways, and I'm really thankful for doing what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Can you
I think.
repeat that phrase, Danny? Could you repeat that phrase where what meets evolutionary?
It's where MovNat is right where being physical meets the understanding of human evolution, the conceptual level. And so for me, as somebody who was a wrestler and understood the need for physicality, but also had this biology background, it was just a perfect fit.
Okay. I a little, so I just wanted to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's what you said touches a lot of people, and that's where a lot of people get into it, like Erwan Le Carré's famous videos, the workout the world forgot. I've heard a lot of people see that, and same thing with me, like when it came out in 2012 or whenever, because when I was a kid, when a lot of us are kids, especially, I'm like a super old guy compared to like the young bucks now, who like young bucks playing video games. But when I was young in Pennsylvania, we'd run around in the woods all the time, and I loved it. Then we moved down to a subdivision, and I felt like I was kind of half in jail down here in Texas. You just didn't have the same. There were boulders, deer running around. There were underground streams. It was gorgeous.
There was a whole world to discover, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's kind of like the workout the world forgot that Erwan, his video that sort of launched MovNat was what I first discovered too. And interestingly enough, what drew me to go check MovNat out, as you're sort of alluding to in a way, wasn't reasoning or logic at that time. It was like, oh, I'm going to be able to take this and help people who are 60 exercise better. That wasn't even in my mind space. I was kind of disillusioned. I was working at a gym that was in Connecticut, kind of serving the rich and the uber wealthy. And I was just having a little bit of an existential crisis. And I came across that that video, the workout the world forgot, and there was something about it that resonated deeper to me that said, there's something true about this. It was more intuitive, it was more feel than it was logic at the time. And then I came to discover, like, okay, I went to go see, I was like, either I need to go see what this hippie's up to, because something resonates with me here, and maybe it's just total nonsense, maybe it was just a good video. And then come to discover that there's an entire conceptual framework that is extremely logical, logic to the highest level in a lot of ways, I think. But that was another. That's kind of not what brought me to it, interestingly enough.
Yeah, reality comes first, and science is based on that.
Yeah, and like I grew up in New Jersey. I just had a little patch of nature near me. I wasn't running around free in the mountains to understand the importance of nature. It was just a little exposure to it, just that little bit of wildlife and texture and ecosystems, and that's all you need if you are exposed to that. I think it's helpful to understand what it's about.
When did you graduate from UVA?
2007, a year late.
Yeah. I have a sister, my youngest sister of two. She went to UVA, but she graduated, what was it, 91, something like that.
Yeah. It's a great school. It's very picturesque.
Yeah.
It's a little elitist, but it's like where the North meets the South, so you kind of get the best of both worlds in a certain regard. I was from the Jersey Shore, so I wasn't like used to this idea of at 20 dressing up and eating wine and cheese as a thing to do recreationally. So I wasn't really prepared for that, but it was a great learning experience. Out of everything else, that's why you're there, and it's a great school in that regard.
Did you take much physics there?
I didn't. I actually was. For a science-minded guy, I avoided chemistry, molecular biology, physics. I took a class called How Things Work. It was just a dumbed-down version of physics. I'm actually decent at math. I was decent at calculus, but I never saw, honestly, the value in it because it was just so abstract to me. And I'm a very experiencer type of person. I needed to, as we've spoken about, Michael. Like, I need the evidence of the senses and to be able to input that into something very real and tangible that can be felt to really find value in it. Interestingly enough, now I'm reading physics because now I have a purpose and a calling that now I'm really interested in physics, all the way down to quantum physics, chemistry and math and algorithms. But back then I just didn't understand the reason for it.
I wish I would have known you then, because there's actually a professor from England who works at UVA. And people should look him up. Everyone listening, I recommend look up Dr. Michael Fowler, Fowler. He teaches physics from a historical perspective. He's got some lecture notes online for early physics and then modern physics, early modern. Really, really good stuff, because it takes you through things more historically and therefore more inductively. Instead of giving you ideas out of nowhere, oh, here's an idea and work a problem, and here's an idea, and we don't know where it came from in science and what the evidence for it is or what the context for it is. Just learn the idea and do the problems, do the math. He talks about how things develop step by step.
Well, it's interesting to have so much more insight, because you steered me toward the history of philosophy too. You have so much more insight on an idea and what it means when you understand the evolution of that idea itself, right? Mm-hmm. That's such a big thing that I've come to discover. Every time I embark on some new thing, I want to know where it came from, why, what historical circumstances arose this need for this particular way of thinking, right?
True, right, agreed.
One question I would have for you, Danny, is kind of taking the conversation back to where you first sort of went and discovered what was going on with the gentleman who was it again that you said, the hippie guy? Who was the...
Okay, we have it for the world right here. Danny Clark is calling Erwan a hippie. You heard it here, folks.
Sorry. I just was trying to get the name so I had it right, but... Yeah.
Well, at that time, the brain, I'm still operating at not an evolved brain state yet, and put him in the hippie category.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
fully call him hippie now, but Erwan Lacour is his name,
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. Okay.
he's the founder of MovNat. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask you, when you first saw him, something in you was already sort of there and it spoke to you. I think I got that impression from how you sort of recall that. But I think that you could almost put people in a couple of categories, maybe disagree with me here, but there's those who like see that and go, oh my gosh. I mean, that was how I felt when I first discovered a philosopher that I really read a lot. I love her stuff. It was like it was already there within me. But I'm wondering about the people that see this and they have no, growing up in nature and, running around outside all day, all night. What about those people? What do you recommend for people who just feel like they're not in touch with that already on some level? How do people like that kind of start to embrace it? It becomes a part, like just like your core philosophy almost. How does that happen for those?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, alongside the physical progression that happens when you start moving more naturally, there can become a mental progression too, to understand why it's important to understand the role of nature in our lives. Now, how do we market it to people who aren't necessarily even like there, not even in the space that nature is an important thing? That's a challenge, because fundamentally, I think there's a strong philosophical current that underruns our entire culture that divorcement from nature happened a long time ago, and it's something that we're trying to get back, but it's still not in the mainstream consciousness of most people, especially if they haven't been exposed to experience. Or maybe at a very superficial level. If they don't understand it, they don't understand it, and that's understandable why they don't. Maybe they weren't exposed to it, and it's again a very a very prevalent issue, multifaceted issue that's in our culture. So how do we get to those people? Well, there's a lot of people who come to MovNat. There's a lot of problems that MovNat inherently solves beyond just reconnecting you to nature and the outside world. Because even in isolation, even using the abstract movements that are found in nature and bringing them into a gym, we have physical therapists teaching this at PT clinics. They don't have to explain the background reasoning or the logic of why they're doing it. They just have them do it because they know that this makes a lot of sense, and so they just have people do it as a part of therapy, and it works, and that's all that really matters.
And I think kids do it intuitively in houses. What do? They crawl around, they jump on things, they jump off things. So it's not like this has to be done outdoors only. That's preferable for a lot of reasons we could demonstrate scientifically, but we're human beings and we move the same indoors or out.
And that's a great point too. What you just said is it can be approached very playfully too, because someone might not understand the reason to be out in nature doing complex movements and being adaptable. Someone might not even understand why you'd want to go into a gym or even a PT clinic if they don't have an acute issue. But that's another interesting thing that we all understand is the value of play. So the beauty of MovNat is we can approach it very playfully. We can just create obstacles and create games, and natural movement can be, at least as an entry point, it happens intuitively and automatically. So not to say that we can't and shouldn't refine from there, because we're all in a really high state of divorcement and dysfunction in our bodies, but it can be a really good entry point. And then from there, whatever your entry point is, the idea is to mentally progress you at least to the level that there's a practice behind this that can help refine and empower you on many levels, and you can take it where you want. But there's more to it than whatever that initial reason is, whether it's play, whether it's nature, whether it's therapy.
And now, I'm not sure if you know this, Melanie. Maybe we talked about it, but we talk about so much we always forget things. But people, MovNat instructors around the world, do things like, I'll just take one guy, for example, Cameron Prado. He is of Urban Movement here in Houston.
Okay.
And so he works with people on MovNat and he does parkour.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he's done parkour and yoga and stuff for years, but until he learned MovNat, he said he never really understood human movement.
Mm-hmm.
And he also teaches adaptive movement, which is a system to help people who've lost a limb or two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then MovNat instructors teach special forces in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So this stuff, I mean, look, it goes from, people who've lost a limb or two to kids to people who haven't done much movement to athletes to the most elite athletes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's
That
human
makes
movement.
a marketing challenge, though, is because like marketing 101 is you have to have a niche that you go after, right? And that's the thing. Like natural human movement is the foundation for everything. We don't have one little avatar we can create that this is for.
Yeah, sure.
It makes it very difficult, but it's in the long run. As the understanding comes about, it'll be more powerful. The more that it's just going to take time.
Yeah.
And for any parents listening, I mean, I've got 3 kids. I grew up in North Dakota in a small town, and we'd leave in the morning, and sometimes we'd be back by dinner, and that's the first time we got back home. But I would not send my kids out into the city and say, have a day and see you tonight at dinner when you get around to coming home. I would worry about them. And that's a very different mentality. You said we're sort of divorced from nature, and we see that almost now as a threat. I think people do it a bit, but it's not so much nature. It's just the unknown, sending your kids out in the world by themselves. I was 6 riding bike around my whole town. I didn't even go home for hours and hours. Nothing ever occurred to my parents to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do? And for any parents listening, how do you recommend they allow kids just to get out and explore, but maybe you haven't dealt with that yet but I'm just wondering if you have any opinions or thoughts about that.
About kids?
Well, just what would you advise parents to do to allow their children that freedom, like you had in New Jersey and Michael had in Pennsylvania and I had in North Dakota? Where did that go, and how do we sort of reclaim that again?
So one of my inspirations is a guy named Tom Brown, and he has a really good quote, and it's, what you don't speak to, you don't know. What you don't know, you fear, and what you fear, you ultimately destroy. And to me, that speaks to nature. If you want to enable your kids to get the incredible benefits, the multifaceted benefits of exposure to nature, from the movement to the learning to the everything that's inherent in learning, the relaxation, everything, the character development, you have to allow them to be in that space. And the reality, though, is there's dangers, and it depends where you live, and it's a different world than it was when we grew up. And so the easiest way, the most tangible thing that you can do is A, spend time with them in nature, and B, empower yourself to learn how to re-engage with nature so they can model you. Ultimately, modeling is what kids are doing all the time. So they might be in nature learning, and then they're modeling you sitting all the time, right? So if you participate with them, it's a double whammy. You're out there with them. You can, if they are near danger, you can spot them, you can support them, you can be a part of it, or you can steer them away from it. You can be a guide, the guide that any parent should be and usually is, and you can participate and model yourself what it means to be empowered and capable and strong.
Right. Oh, that's a great idea. I love the modeling idea of that concept. But you're right. It is tricky because, like, I was just wondering about the kids. When we were kids, we were so independent that we actually kind of learned what we were capable of on our own. Mm-hmm. We didn't have someone saying, don't do that. You're going to fall. You're going to get hurt, or you might get hurt, whatever. We just tried it. And if we fell, we got hurt, you know what I mean? So, but now it's almost like there's this sort of preemptive, safety net we put out there so that the kids are not going to get hurt.
Kids generally know what to do. It's written in there. It's written right in their drive to move, to explore, to understand the world around them, to experiment. Yeah, and most of them have a healthy sense of danger, they're not going to do really, really dumb things. That kind of comes around later when you're trying to prove your masculinity or whatever you're doing later. So at that age, I really think if the main threat of nature at that age, especially after I think like 2 years or 3 years, is maybe even 4. Other than them, not once they have a general sense of things, really the dangers are the people. That's what you have to watch out for.
Yeah,
not
I was going to
nature.
say,
They know what to do with nature.
I'm more scared of some people. Some people are great, some category, but some human beings, I'm way more scared of them than I'm ever scared of anything in nature or any wild animal. I'd rather be around some wild animals than I would around certain human beings.
And it's a tough thing though, because it's like it's good to be protective of your kids, but you don't want to inject that fear into them. This fear ultimately is disempowerment. There's healthy fear, but you gotta always be asking yourself, what is healthy and rational, and what am I just passing along to my kids so that they don't get exposed to the world, and then they don't ever get this inductive reasoning that you guys talk about, and like experience the world and have questions and curiosity and exploration in their life, and risk is a part of living.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And some things we could recommend for people to do is go camping, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. There's like some camps people can go to. Like Melanie's kids have gone to a camp in Minnesota last summer. They went for a whole week. You know, they're with a group of people, but you know, you're basically isolated in the wilderness.
Yeah, it's in Boundary Waters, which is a beautiful area and very untouched, very remote. But they camped for a week. They made their own fires. They slept on the ground and stuff. This year they're going. Yeah, they portaged. Yep, they had their canoes. They got to get a lot of miles on their canoe. It's kind of fun. And then this year they're going for 2 weeks, and it's called Camp Minojan. It's been around for like 35, 40 years or something in the Boundary Waters. So. But Michael helped the kids get ready for that mentally. A lot of it was they were very apprehensive because this is brand new, and it was a brand new idea. And I didn't know anything about it because I'd never gone, but their father has. But Michael said, look, we're going to need to get you guys in shape because you cannot carry a canoe on your shoulders if you've never carried anything before, let alone a canoe. And they said they'll be portaging. They told all the campers before they even came to camp. So Kira and Leo, my 2 older, they got pretty much through the MovNat, like maybe first few things to get them really, really going. But it was great because we were videotaping and sending it to Michael and showing him how the kids were progressing. And he's like, all right, now do this. It was really, really good for them. So this year with 2 weeks up there, I think we're going to have to double our efforts. So.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, so that's the power of internet. That's another thing we could do because like I'd make up a workout for the kids using MovNat methods, movements. Start from the basics. Make like hour video. Show them what to do for the week. Post it on YouTube privately, and then build on that and make up a new one for the next week. Mm-hmm. And then they've got that. Now the videos are online, and they can watch that for the rest of their lives. Yeah. And then
I can from my kids' perspective, like, oh, I have to do a workout, and then they see what it is. Like, oh, this looks awesome. Compared to like, oh, this person's making me like to wait up and down 100 times and just go for a long run. Like it's so much more intuitive for kids. It's engaging, but for adults, it's a whole other story. That's the challenge in a lot of ways, and the beauty of what it can do, the power it has to not only help you move better and feel better, but restore a lot of our cognitive and mental states and overall brain functioning. That's something that's new research is starting to show, and that's what I'm really most excited about it is, we sort of live under this model that like you're a kid, you're engaged in the world, then you become an adult, and you just kind of live in the space of your brain and very realistically, very distinct regions of our brain that we spend time in. And then we just sort of degrade from there. We lose our ability to move, we lose our ability to hear, we lose our ability, all our senses start to go. We start to forget things, and then we die. And that narrative is kind of the standard narrative we have that we've all accepted. And I flat think I'm calling BS on it, really. I think that's totally due to lack of stimulation. Now, the only thing I've ever found physically that changes over time is the ability to recover. Like you get an injury or something like that, the ability to recover goes down over time.
There's no doubt about 12 miles, and it takes a little longer to recover when you're older than when you're younger, but you can still do it.
Sure, and that's fine. That's a part. There's a natural aging process. We're not going to deny.
Did I say that right? It takes longer to recover when you're older than you're younger, or did I say it the other way? I forgot. You get the idea.
But all these other things that we take for granted are just purely due to lack of stimulation. At the very least, we can slow them way down, and we can just live them a longer, more vital, more engaged, more quality-driven, happy life if we just understand the value of, at the baseline, stimulating ourselves in ways beyond what we're commonly told.
Yeah, and if people want to look that up, you can look up Dr. Terry Wahls, Wahls. She had MS, and one thing she did to cure herself or put that in remission or whatever, one thing besides diet was exercise. If I forgot the author now, but the book, The Autism Revolution, I think it's called. I think that author has the basically correct theory about what's going on with autism. I think it's basically an epigenetic disease. And so that means sleep, diet, clearing up toxins, exercising. So that book gave me a lot of theoretical insight and a lot of good examples. And I know in my own experience, I don't know for sure. I was never tested, but I think I was autistic spectrum. And then combined with like massive sleep deprivation. I know specifically the philosophy I've learned, being more rational, being able to introspect better, knowing logic, doing the kind of paleo, whole foods, evolutionary based diet, and then MovNat. Those things have helped clear it up a lot. So I know from my own experience right there, movement matters. Okay, her name's Dr. Martha Herbert. And Karen Weintraub also, The Autism Revolution. That's a book I'd recommend. Movement Matters.
Yeah, and to take it a step further, if we're talking about like the capability of the brain to regenerate, I think that there's different levels, right? Like doing nothing being the worst thing, exercise being a huge quantum leap forward, like just doing something, getting your blood flowing, exercising your peripheral physiology in some way, learning some basic patterns. It's been proven to stimulate angiogenesis in the brain, which is just more vascularization, essentially. The more you use your synapses. But then there's this other quantum leap forward, which we're talking about here, which is beyond just exercise, just beyond just stimulating strength and sort of what I call peripheral adaptations, like bigger muscles, maybe stronger nerve impulses, maybe more mitochondrial density, maybe greater VO2 max. These all happen in the peripheral body. Central adaptations, beyond just more blood flow, have been proven to be elicited through complex movement in complex environments. Not abstract complex movement. I'm not talking about doing a cartwheel. I'm talking about the full epigenetic expression of movement, which involves an environment around you, which involves reading your environment and making decisions about what you're going to do and having to put your body in weird positions and problem solve and figure out movement. And that's been proven to elicit synaptogenesis and neuroplasticity in ways that no other type of movement can or ever will do. And there's a lot of far-reaching benefits to this because we're talking about building a bigger, more complex, more capable brain and probably stimulating pathways that maybe you're dormant if you don't move in this way, just because of how interconnected the brain is. So that's a mouthful, but it's a big
Great.
thing that my research and my even anecdotal experience has led me to want to really bring out there. So let's take this a step further. Let's stop talking about exercise and start talking about, well, what type of exercise? If we're looking for optimal, not just like the minimum threshold to like decay a little slower, if we want it to thrive and to grow and to even expand beyond what we are as a child, to be examples for them, then we need to be thinking about what we're doing and how we're doing it. That's an earful.
Yeah, so people can pause, rewind, listen to that over again, think about that a little bit, do some research on their own. So what about, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say there's a lot of other research to support it too. We have working memory studies, but it's in its infancy still. So if you're a person that's like, I need research to back everything up you're saying, just wait a little while. Look what's out there. There's a good amount out there, but. Or
start doing MovNat yourself and do the research on your own and learn from experience.
Exactly.
But so what about in yourself? As I say, I've noticed major changes since because I've exercised in the gym before, but what really mattered was, and that's good, as we say, something is better than nothing. If that's all you can do, your context, do that until you can do something more. Try to get more complex movements at home. You can buy 2x4s. Put some 2x4s at home. Look up Danny's videos. There's a lot of stuff you can do on 2x4s. But I noticed, to get back to the point, like, working out in the gym is one thing, but it's not until I got outdoors and did the MovNat stuff that, with the more complex movements in a complex environment, that I could really start to introspect and see all these cognitive changes, attitude, memory, thinking ability. So I know it really matters. And I say, I think I used to be autistic, and I can see big differences in these different parameters. But what about yourself, Danny? Have you noticed exercise? I mean, it sounds like you've done it all your life, so you don't have a contrast of doing it and not doing it. But what about, like, have you noticed some differences in yourself or clients in MovNat versus not?
Yeah, it's been really profound. On the physical level, I, after 18 years of wrestling and then a whole bunch of powerlifting, had some major problems. I had some lower back issues. I had 5 bulging discs in my lower back, and that evolved into a neck issue, to where I don't really know. I never got an MRI, but tons of tension and problems. So, the spine is your center of your body, and that to me was like pretty important to have feeling well. And I also knew, a lot of other wrestlers and athletes who just really abuse and beat the crap out of their body or do repetitive movements. And even at my age, or even pretty close to my age, they stop being able to walk or function well. And that's, to me, like, that's the end. For somebody who is very kinesthetic and understands the value of movement, that would be the end for me in a lot of ways. So physically, MovNat has regenerated my body, along with other modes of therapy, for sure. But the foundation of just simply moving the way I'm designed to move and engaging with the world around me in progressive steps has healed unhealable injuries. I don't have bulging discs in my back anymore. That's confirmed. And my neck is like 95% better. I still have occasional tension, and that's something that I'm still working on. But it went from almost not even being able to function or think to not even really being an issue, which is excellent. So that's on the physical level. On the cognitive level, I just really realize how much being outside and moving with MovNat and engaging with my environment just gives me a sense of well-being, for one. I just have the most creative thoughts, and almost old memories come up and just these like feelings, and there's a lot of depth there. And I really think I attribute that to, being out in nature. I think you're reading patterns, you're in a different environment. It's not so predictable and sterilized. And I think it really stimulates areas of your brain that are pretty dormant or interconnects things in ways. Again, this is non-technical and this is just me speculating, but I find through my experience that I have a lot of different areas that start to integrate and connect in my thought patterns that help me live a really much richer life, an inspired life, one with deeper thoughts, one that's much more poetic in a lot of ways in how I view the world and how I view other people. And so that's really the most profound. That's really what keeps me sticking around with it, is how much it enriches my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I found through experience, what really works well for me is to get out in the morning and exercise first thing. Wake up, do this and that, take care of my beloved kitties, and then even before breakfast, but not before coffee. Not before coffee.
That was a question I had next, actually. Like, do you find that carries you through the day, or do you wait until later in the day when you have a higher level of energy, maybe? How do you do it?
I generally try to have, I try to build good habits, and then I deliberately break them. I don't like to live a habit-based, routine-based life if possible. I don't believe in fundamentally that creates an adaptable person. If you need something, not to disrespect you, Michael, if you need something to function, you're going to be reliant. Your brain's expecting it. And then what if you don't have it? Then you can't. And it just generally, for me, it's just an extension of my mindset. But this is sort of like, that's just me. So I have certain general principles. Like I generally only use caffeine when I really feel like I need it. I don't use it to wake up. I try to, if I don't wake up well, go for a walk, get some fresh air. I also sort of have the luxury of I work from home, so I can do that. So it's not everybody's life. I understand that. I do drink teas. I just try to do things that stimulate energy naturally, but I'm not against caffeine. I just use it when I feel like I really need it. And it seems to be more effective that way, because then I actually respond to it instead of build tolerance to it.
I guess here's my question. You know how, this is for me anyway, I'll speak from my own point of view, but it feels like at certain points of the day, and it's not always the same every day, but I have more energy, like say at 11 in the morning, and sometimes I have it at 3 in the afternoon. And in a way, my life is I could kind of work out at those times when I feel like, okay, I would get the best workout. Do you find that's the case for you as well? Or is that just because I'm not as consistent in my working out as I should be, and so I get these kind of erratic patterns? Or what do you notice about that?
I notice that when I know I'm busy and I have other things going on and it's very unlikely I'm just going to be like spontaneously going to do this when it's perfect, I choose whether I'm in advance, whether I'm going to do it in the morning or the evening. And both seem to work for me. Actually, energy is probably better in the evening, but I tend to like to start my day because my thoughts are more creative for the rest of the day when I work out in the morning. Mm-hmm. And this isn't necessarily, just as a disclaimer, I'm not like outside. I live in Vermont. Like there's a lot of times it's just doing MovNat in a gym. So it's not like it has to be this purist thing either. When I have a more flexible schedule and I have more, and I already have this sort of intrinsic motivation feeling like, oh, I can't wait to the part of the day when I can go move. And that's not, even me as a professional, that's not the majority of the time, realistically. But when I know that's coming, then I leave it open and I just do it when I feel like it. So I think that especially in the beginning, when you have this sort of inertia against, because you're busy, because you're stressed, because again, you don't love movement the same way that maybe someone else does, which is most people, you should sort of figure out a time and just commit to it. And then once you have the good habit and you look forward to your workouts, and your life also allows, you can sort of go with what works best, because then that flexibility allows you to have better experiences and make better decisions of where and how and what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd add a little to that, like one thing I notice, I like to exercise in the morning because it helps really. If I'm inside, as kind of Danny's pointed out, things are so like clean and all these flat surfaces and man-made and antiseptic. But when I'm outside, you got the leaves, and there's so much dimensionality to everything you see. You look down, and there's not a flat floor or carpet. There's all these leaves, and the ground's not level. You look around, and there's these trees, because thankfully I live in an area, I'm very fortunate where I can get to a very kind of wild area close by. Not like Camp Menogen, but still very nice given the context. But and I can tell it affects my brain. Being indoors does not wake me up or really get me going as being outdoors does. And there's all this practicality to it, very complex environment. It really stimulates my brain and it makes me feel better. And then when I exercise, just, so that's one thing people can think about. People who already exercise will know. People who don't can maybe observe on their own and their own introspection. But the world's a better place when I exercise, put it that way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if I don't get enough exercise, I don't like myself. Other people don't like myself. Don't like me. But
your body,
the thing,
at every level.
Yeah, what the thing Danny's saying, people can look up like what some people like Art Devaney say, and I do some of that too. I get out in the morning, but sometimes I try to do it in the afternoon sometimes also. Maybe half an hour, an hour in the morning, half an hour, an hour in the afternoon.
Right.
Just like Danny says, you don't want to get too regular about some things. Maybe sleep. I've heard it's really good to be regular about that. Some circadian rhythm stuff, but you need to be more adaptive. And Art Devaney is really big on that. And then sometimes I find if I'm tired, the exercise wakes me up like nothing else will.
Yeah.
And then you got to be, as Danny says, be adaptive and be ready to go in certain situations. If something happens and you're tired, sometimes it doesn't matter. You just got to act, right? So you don't want to push it like do SEAL week, Hell week on your own, be sleep deprived, but to some extent we should be ready to go in, like if we're a little hungry, we're a little tired, we still need to be ready to act, right?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, like what we're really trying to do with MovNat is just help people fall back in love with movement. It's fundamentally something that culturally was suppressed at a very young age. This instinct, this drive to move, to be able to explore and feel the kinesthetic joy of interacting with your environment and other people and everything. Other people, our environment, your own self. And it's something that was suppressed at a very young age. We can get into the details of that, but it's really trying to reawaken. It's not something that's because you are older, you don't like to move. That's nonsense. I think that's a product of the environment that we created for ourselves when we sit in elevated chairs and think that we're just a brain and a mind and we don't identify with the rest of our body at all. So that's what it's about, is recreating, building joy around movements, and so that it's not a chore anymore. It becomes an expression of your own self-empowerment, your own self-love, your own self-worth, and your own drive to engage in life.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Seems like, just a lot of people are I don't know if they're just, they don't mind sitting all day, or I think that the term is desk jockey, but a lot of work now from 8 to 5 or however long people, and it goes past 5 o'clock. It's into the evening, these people that work, for a company, and they don't have that flexibility like you could just go work out or whatever. So they're in an office and they don't have a choice. And just sitting there, I'm sure there's something you might even recommend that they could do to make the day more filled with motion and keep them awake.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a major initiative we have, is to get this in the office more, because first, just simply wherever you are, wherever you find yourself sitting in an elevated chair, that's not necessarily an unnatural position, right? It's unnatural in that, we used to sit on rocks and stuff, even before we had modern technology. It's not like you're not sitting on the ground, it's wrong. It's what is your position? How tense are you? What is your breathing patterns like? How can we take a second and tune into something kinesthetic, something that's currently going on, not always being the abstract, forward-thinking, creating phase or mode of consciousness. So if we can tune into those simple things wherever you are, that's a huge, again, quantum leap forward in terms of thinking, because most of the time we are totally unconscious of our body until it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
If we are that type of person, but we can all be that type of person and get benefit from that. Now, here's the thing. Even if you tune in a little bit, that's going to go a long way. The second step is add some diversity to your movement. So don't throw out your elevated chair and stand up now, and that's it. Keep the elevated chair and stand up sometimes, and then sit down, and then kneel, and then take a break and lie on your back and allow your shoulders to open and elongate your neck, and then stand up again. Maybe go and press your arms against the wall and open up, simulate hanging. Mm-hmm. And you can do a deep squat. You can start to, even if you're really into MovNat and really want to feel your best, you can start to see movement domains and move through a little bit of each one of them. I do that all day. I work at home. I'm at a computer all day. I understand I don't have to deal with office culture, and that's a hard thing, and just the clothing associated with that necessarily. But there's anything you do, just like we've already talked about, is way better than nothing, So I would encourage people to still come, learn what natural movement is, what it means, and learn how you can integrate it into what you do at your office, as you walk to your car, as you get in your car, as you get out of your car, as you engage with your children, as you sit and watch TV. You can be MovNatting and moving more naturally and tuning in right there. It doesn't have to be this very esoteric, poetic, perfect practice to get incredible benefits.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
that's right.
To segue on that, 2 questions. So given the current context of some work environments and most school environments, this is question 1, what are some things students can do? And number 2, what do you think would be some things people could do to have a better work environment, work and school environments more appropriate for the whole human being?
Yeah, well, these 2 questions are linked by the common idea of the reality that our environment shapes us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on the bigger picture, if you're going to have to make a choice, because either your kids and yourself are going to be totally, or you can only do so much within these environments, right? Like you can only do so much. So you're going to have to figure out a way to compensate for the rest of your time that you're in these sort of prison-like situations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or you're going to have to send your kid to a type of school, or put yourself, and we all have the power to change our lives if we really want to, put yourself in a situation for an employer or something that's more open-minded and understands the value of human life and experience. There's more and more schools and work environments that are starting to see the value in enrichment. And this is something coming down the pipeline. So until then, you may have to compensate, and you may have to just do what you can do. You can't change their circumstances necessarily, or unless you can, then change them.
Yeah. So
the first thing, aware of the issue. If you're not aware of the issue, if you don't understand why you have neck tension, because you're like, I work out, I go to the gym for 30 minutes a day, I eat really well. Why does my neck hurt? Why don't I want to move? Why do I just want to sit around all day and be on the couch? You aren't aware of the problem fundamentally, and that's the first step. You have to become aware of what the root of the problem is, and you have to work on solving it, even if it's just chipping away at it a little bit. If you don't understand the problem, you're just going to do more of the same thing. You're going to say, I'm just going to work out more. I'll increase it to an hour, and I'm going to do yoga or something, which could work. It depends, but a lot of people are in this cycle of they don't understand why they have these issues, or they just accept them as normal because our culture is so sedentary that what's normal now would be totally abnormal back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
The that you can't lift a certain weight and be comfortable and capable and feel good in your body, like that would have been totally abnormal and even be considered physical illiteracy back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's normal. Being physically illiterate is just how most people are.
Yeah.
It's all relative.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw, looking up some happy birthday things for Mel's kid Leo. I was watching some African kids dance, and you got these kids that are like 5 or 10, and the way they can move, every single one of them in this village, their hips, their head, their arms, their legs, they're jumping, they're rolling. It was amazing. It's like you get a group of typical American kids, and unfortunately, I wish it were different. I don't like this, but no way could they do that stuff. You know, some kids thankfully can dance. They do like rap dancing or whatever. They can move, but generally, you know, you're not going to find that.
Mm-hmm. That's the movement. Some kids are from nature so young that they never really learn how to move. Their feet don't even form correctly, and that's going to throw everything off. And then that's a whole other issue and sort of related. It's just cultural tension, right? Like what we expect of kids. If you put a lot of mental tension on a child, it's going to manifest in their movement. They're going to be tight. We hold tightness and tension in our physical body, not just in our minds. Our subconscious minds integrate these into dialogues, and that integrates itself into unconscious patterns of tension in your body. And it starts really young. That window happens very, very young. And so, yeah, of course we're going to see differences in culture. The value system is totally different. The philosophy underpinning an African culture versus our culture, two different things.
Yeah, and what you say about the tension getting in your body and staying with you through all your life, I don't know to what extent, you know, I don't know your mind. I can't mind meld and get in there. I don't know what extent you know, but that might be, maybe not, but that might be more true than you know. Like, people should read the book The Deepest Well by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. It's healing the the subtitle, Healing the Long-Term Effects of Childhood Adversity. Very good, very readable book. I listened on Audible, but she discusses epigenetics. She discusses the effect of childhood trauma of all types on later life. And she does it in a way that's very approachable. It's not some boring, abstract, theoretical book, but she discusses how she came up with this, things in her own life, what it's taken to get people to appreciate it. She actually has a short TED talk. So this stuff has like long-term consequences, so it's good. And as you kind of said, if people would look up, one thing I think they're missing is role models. We need good movement role models. And if people would look up, if they want some, you can't necessarily look for someone who went to the army or a coach. They're good, you know. You got a lot of great people, good people want to do their best, but we're in the culture we're in. It's not their fault. I think if you look up, like, you know, you can look for different people. I can't mention everybody, but if people do look up the MovNat videos, you can see some very good movers with very good technique, and you should try to emulate that. That's one thing that would help. And then if people, as you say, they're sitting too much, they need to learn a sense of how their body should really move, and then they can have that contrast. All we do is sit all the time, so they don't know what it's really like. Most people, I didn't, you know. You don't know what it's like to really move and really use your body appropriately. So without that contrast, without that knowledge, you can't understand. So if they get role models, they get an idea, an experience in what it really is to move, then as you say, they'll be a lot better off.
Yeah, and I think at the higher level, I mean, kids, it's obviously so important that they have role models, but like other adults need role models too, right?
I did. Thankfully, you, Erwin, you know.
Exactly. So
I couldn't have done it without y'all.
it's a big picture thing. It's not just about your kids. I mean, I feel the same way. I have a kid. I'm always thinking how I'm gonna have the biggest influence on him, at least for a certain period. What can I do to model and make sure I'm not fearful, make sure I'm not an angry person? What can I do to instill even things that are not said in him, confidence and capability and security in the world, and comfort with the world around him. And but as adults, we actually affect each other too, because I think that's, rather than donating large amounts of money or being, there's a lot of beautiful things you can do, but I think the most primary thing is how you move and what your actions are in terms of your gestures to other people, your body language, your confidence, the security that you emulate in other people, that you're capable and able to be there for them, and the balance of all these different things. And the things that I try to leave out of there are fear and anger, because those are the two things that, where's those childhood traumas come from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You know where they're from. So how can we as adults perpetuate a better future and nurture each other with better role models without it being a verbal, like, I'm going to tell you how to be thing. You don't have to tell anybody anything. Language is abstract. Show them.
Yeah.
Be it.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Talk the talk and walk the walk.
So, yeah, I mean, this is such a big deal, and this is like the halo sort of banner of MovNat, is this idea of being strong to be helpful. The original, MovNat stems from Méthode Naturelle from France, Georges Herbe. It has a long lineage, and his sort of slogan was strong to be useful. But I really like helpful better, because it's this sort of, to me, useful is very utility driven, like be a servant to your culture, whereas helpful is very human. It's very like, I'm going to affect humanity in a lot of ways. I'm going to be my best self so I can offer something to myself in the world. That's not just utility, not just economy, but humanity. And that's really what we're aiming for here. That's the big picture. That's what I'd like to actualize as MovNat, is to play some role in that humanity that we're all striving for. It doesn't have to, I'm not saying we are it, but I think that what Erwan has unearthed and what we've developed and the lineage we carry forward is something that is a part of that puzzle.
Could you tell us a little more about Erwan and George Herbe and what they've done, and so people can understand a little bit where this kind of comes from?
Yeah, Erwan has a great actual article on this that can describe this a lot more than me. I'll give the synopsis, but that article, just so you know, is the history of physical fitness, and it goes through the lineage all the way back from, when we were purely engaged in our environment and had no modern civilization really influencing us at that time, all the way through different thoughts, ideas about fitness and how they prevailed and came to be over time, especially in Europe. And Georges Herbe sort of defied, and this is the early 1900s, not that long ago, sort of defied the current paradigm at that time, which was very rooted here. America's a new country. We were all about the vain, the superficial, the Arnold Schwarzenegger. And whereas Europe, it was very influenced at that time, or even a little before that, by gymnastics. And gymnastics is, there's beautiful movements in it, but it's not exactly natural movement. And it's also sport, right? Like, it's for certain people. Sport is for certain people. It's what you specialize in if you are a certain type of person. Whereas movement is this greater idea of it's for anybody. And Georges Herbe was a French naval officer and discovered, he had two experiences that created this reasoning of the natural method. One was he went to hunter-gatherer tribes for various expeditions and just was really impressed. He was like, how are these people moving like gymnasts all the way through older age? They're not doing these like super acrobatic things, but they're able to do things so effortlessly that even younger people in our culture can't. The second observation was he would go on rescue missions, especially, I think there was one disaster, like a volcano erupted in Haiti or something like that. And I don't remember specifically where it was, but he just, as he was on this rescue mission, they only had so many people to help. Like, you need the other people in this situation to help you, right? And he just made the general observation, like, people can't help each other anymore. Like, There are people who can't even get on a raft. There are people who can't even pick up another human being and drag them or help them or put them on their shoulder. There are people who just don't have basic physical skills to save their own lives and be of any service or use to anybody else. So from that point, he developed the natural method, which was it was just this idea of let's get back to being capable, being able, being useful, and not worrying so much about sport. So let's do these really fundamental things like jumping and climbing and lifting and carrying, and stop specializing in these certain little things that look good for audiences or look good for your body, but really what is important in life. And he came up with it. It was a very simple idea, and that was how it was so eloquent in a lot of ways, right? It honored evolutionary biology, that we have roots that we need to carry forward. But it was simple. And Erwan, what he did was sort of uncover this. Erwan and the foundation of parkour started sort of at the same time, even a little beforehand. Parkour became this rebellion in a lot of ways. It took George Herbay's ideas and turned it into this rebellion and made it very urban and about the same sort of ideas, but maybe not the full expression of natural movement, because they don't do things like water, or they don't do a lot of lifting or anything like that. They do a lot of jumping, climbing, and vaulting. But Erwan took the idea, or read the idea, and actually went somewhere totally different. Instead of the streets of France, he went to the jungles of Brazil and the island of France, and like to nature, to trace it back to the source of the inspiration. And he spent a lot of time testing these ideas and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and how can I create techniques around what does work. So he took it a huge, again, we talk about quantum leaps, a huge quantum leap forward versus from an idea and a concept that was very eloquent and simple to one that was much more developed at the conceptual level. It was much more thought out, and it became extremely necessary, because as we see, if you just throw the average person in nature in a complex scenario, not going to perform well. And if I just throw someone in nature and they haven't been in nature and jump from rock to rock, or stood on uneven textured terrain without their shoes, there's a process of reintroducing these things. In that process, we can use this conceptual framework, which became MovNat, to understand how we can become more efficient at movement, and then ultimately more adaptable at movement by using these forms or techniques and working on them in very simple conditions, like inside, flat levels, simple, and gradually introducing complexity slowly. So he did this beautiful thing, and I've been really proud to participate in that, expand upon it, to organize the progression of how we move through the techniques, and that's what that is. That's the difference between George Herbay and Erwan and MovNat. Is we took a concept and we turned it into a system or a method that's infinitely scalable, something that can be progressed. Someone who is 90 years old, hasn't moved well in 4 decades, maybe even just had a stroke, and they're in a PT office, to someone who's 15 and wants to be the next, be a Tarzan or whatever, or maybe just be an MMA athlete. We've worked with high-level athletes like Carlos Condit. Everybody can benefit from refining natural movement, but it's not as simple as just going outside. It just requires more structure when there's especially the bigger the deficit we have, where we lost our connection to nature. And in general, like concepts and conceptual frameworks historically work better. I mean, look at a street fighter versus a mixed martial artist. Mixed martial artists use techniques and concepts to refine how they fight. A street fighter doesn't. They just purely fight. Both decent fighters. The refined fighter is going to be much more effective at what they do, and it's because of their use of abstraction and concepts and forms and techniques and.
Yeah, so sometimes, like you're saying, people don't have to jump outdoors all of a sudden, and shouldn't. Sometimes, depending on the person, they need to start indoors and then develop their hand strength, their skin strength, their feet strength, and work their way outdoors.
Yeah. Well, it's it's their strength, but it's really about their brain. It's the motor learning that's the limiting factor, what we call competence. Like most people just aren't very coordinated, and they need to go through a learning process that's
I
safe.
wasn't. Heck, when I started this, I mean, sleep deprivation and the autistic thing or whatever, I couldn't even walk like in a slightly uneven yard like smoothly. I'd be
Yeah.
awkward. I mean, literally, I can do it now, but it took me a long time for my brain and my nervous system to develop so I can walk on uneven terrain smoothly. I'd be very awkward and I had trouble with it and I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, and a lot of people have to develop the mobility too, because Ray Cook put this really well. It's like, trying to do movements without range of motion or mobility is like trying to learn an instrument and being deaf. Like, you don't have the tools to understand how to learn if you don't have the range of motion to put yourself in those positions. So that's why it's also really important to progress slowly.
Mm-hmm.
I can show someone how to do a certain movement, like stepping under something really low. If they don't have the range of motion to do it, and that's a lot of neural reasons for that, something that can change very quickly, but they're just going to hurt themselves doing it, or they're going to do it extremely inefficiently. So the point is, you start slow. That's why we start with ground movement. Like the most simple things. Can you kneel? Can you sit upright? Can you stand up without putting your hands on the ground? That's how simple it is to start. And then we build slowly. That's a lot of my work in introducing this, was making the system really, really progressible. So yeah, it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of mobility. It's a lot of strength development. And it happens in a really organic, symbiotic way with MovNat. Instead of trying to isolate each variable and improve them through this and that and yoga and strength training, and I do this with my chiropractor, it's like, no, if you just move the way you're designed, it kind of all happens together. And you may need a little bit of refinement through either a MovNat trainer or maybe even the level of refinement of a therapist, but the foundation, the forms, stay the same.
Yeah, a way I like to put some of that, a lot of people say go hard or go home. I say go smart or go home.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, for some of the stuff I do out in the woods, you better be smart or you're going to get hurt. You can go hard, and I do, but you got to be smart about it first. That's the fundamental, not going hard.
Totally.
I mean, you even taught the kids when you were working with them to get ready for camp that a tree that has a sort of natural lean to it, if you want to climb that, you use that to your advantage, or not try to go the other way and it'll pull you or drop you or won't get up it or whatever.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, using just even a little bit of physics.
How to be really mindful about your environment and think about things and don't just mindlessly try to do something. So we were talking about, like, Danny, if you have a tree that's straight up, it doesn't matter where you climb it. But if it's leaning and you try to climb it on the side against the lean, gravity's going to torque you around underneath.
Yep.
And some people, depending on your experience, they might not be strong enough to hold it. Their skin might be too weak. They're going to fall off and have trouble and can get hurt. But if it's leaning, you need to fall underneath, because that, like, if you jump up and grab, and if someone just hangs from a tree, gravity will pull you down, and that's the side you need to climb up on.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful example of the power of coaching, right? Because somebody can learn that through experience and trial and error the hard way, and maybe you just expedite their learning curve exponentially and very safely by explaining a concept to them and explaining why. Because intuitively, like, a lot of people think, well, I'll just do what I should do. It's like, not always, like, intuitively, you always want to be on top of things because that's what we're used to. But yeah, if you're going to traverse something with a hard angle, you want to be underneath it because you don't want to spin around and fly off of it. It's stable, like, that's totally right. And that's what a coach, that's the value. Like, people see, there's this, like, overly poetic notion that natural movement should just be like, you just expose yourself to nature and it happens. And it's like, no, like, progression and coaching and learning from other people, there's a whole process that needs to happen that will expedite your learning curve, keep you safe, and make it really enjoyable. And these really poetic notions of I'm going to do it by myself, and all I need is nature, fall apart because nobody actually does it. Or if you do, you're like 20, and that's fine. That works for you, but not for everybody.
Yeah, if you're maybe a Newton of movement or something like that, maybe you can get away with it, but otherwise, no.
Yeah.
You know, how many people do you see do a hand-foot crawl, or in other words, a bear crawl correctly? How many, like, high school coaches train people to do it correctly? Like, unfortunately, very few. I didn't know how to do it, correctly either. But with MovNat, I know how to do a bear crawl efficiently, and I can do one like backwards up a slope faster than like some high school and college football players I know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all experience. I lost you a little bit. I went to audio only because my my internet was poor, but I can hear you. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, I was just saying that given an example of the bear crawl, the hand-foot crawl for the importance of coaching, like I don't think I've ever seen anybody on their own who does a hand-foot crawl or a bear crawl correctly.
Right. No, because especially if they don't have environment, right? It's like if you tell them to crawl under something that's, a certain height, they won't because they'll hit their tailbone. Otherwise, their ass is going to be up in the air, because it's more efficient to put weight in your legs. But it doesn't help you when it comes to like harder environments. When you need to crawl on a narrow log and you need your center of gravity low. If you never crawled like that, you're not going to do it because you don't know. You don't have the experience. You don't have that patterning. You don't have that muscle memory to do those things.
And then it seems like a fundamental movement for building off a lot of other things.
For sure. I mean, any contralateral pattern is going to stimulate both hemispheres of your brain, which not all movement necessarily does. But that's something that is very obvious, right? Because left side connected to right hemisphere, right side connected to the left hemisphere. There's a strong integration there, and there's also our fascial networks that run through both sides. So yeah, something like crawling is a great foundational movement.
And from some podcast I listened to, forgot the organization, they were talking about how crawling is important for reestablishing certain patterns and muscle balances in people, because people are so used to walking and doing certain things, then they fall into this adaptation of unbalances. And I think it's been proven that then the brain kind of resets when you go back to crawling. And that makes sense for a variety of reasons, because when every one of us is developing, we always crawl before we walk. We gotta go through that stage. Yep. And like, as and Melanie, you know about the you've worked with some of that, like some kids, about helping develop their contralateral movement to help them move better. Melanie, are you there?
Sorry, well, you cut out for a bit, Michael. Were you talking to me on that?
Yeah.
Oh, there's.
I was saying that.
All right, okay, go ahead.
Talking about the contralateral movement and crawling, and I know you've learned about how people need that in their development to learn to be proper movers.
Yeah, I was having a little trouble with Leo at first. He wasn't moving quite in the way kids do, like climbing things and doing stuff like that. And I read up a few places about that, where if you miss the crawling stage, and parents sometimes just want their kids to start walking right away as soon as they can. But there's this sort of natural progression, I guess you could say, of like almost a scooting thing to getting the hands and the legs to work together, and then the crawling up and pulling yourself up, then walking. Yeah, we kind of missed that a little bit with Leo, because he had some troubles after he was born. He had a lot of reflux and a lot of troubles with his digestion and stuff. So we had to actually kind of go back and get him to figure out crawling and work on that with him a little bit, so that he could kind of catch up, I guess you could say. It was really hard for him. So.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, and it's something we hear a lot for sure. You know, when kids miss that developmental step,
Yeah.
it messes them up in a lot of ways. And I think that, you know, there's almost like a little bit of a mystique around crawling now. It's like it does something cool to the brain that allows them to do all these other great things, but it's like it's really, I think, quite simply, most of the other movements, sitting, rolling, like they're not, your hands aren't getting a lot of, and your upper body's not getting a lot of load, and it's not getting a lot of sensation.
Right.
You know, crawl is like, okay, I'm going to load my upper body. I'm going to integrate this upper body into movement, and and that's like climbing fundamentally is crawling. It's upright crawling. So these two things these are developmental steps that are tightly linked. And I think crawling can help you walk better, but I think crawling can help you do everything better. And every other movement, every step is just as important as crawling. Sitting, crawling, jumping, getting up off, like they're all of equal importance.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, I don't know if, you know, people might discount crawling a little bit in terms of a workout, but if someone wants to really feel, really feel their strength and feel some fatigue in their chest and shoulders, try doing a long hand-foot crawl, barefoot, bear crawl, like forward or backward or up a slope. Some people would really be surprised.
Well, and don't you feel like too that you've got your hands in touch with the ground and your feet, and if you're not wearing socks and shoes, because it seems like most of the time, at least here where it's cold, I wear socks in the house and not shoes, but when you're outside and you are touching the ground and you've got your feet there, you are in touch with, it just feels so much more like you know what you're doing and it's all working and integrating together, what I mean? Where if you're just kind of always, there's this barrier of your foot to sock, shoe, and then ground. There have been times where I'm carrying something, and just because I have socks on, I'm worried I might slip on the carpet because I can't feel exactly where you know what I mean? So I'll just take off socks and just go barefoot. But it's funny, that whole connection with where you're at, it really does something for your mind and how much you feel in touch and safe with what you're doing in your environment.
Yeah, so there's that, the stuff Danny's and Erwan have developed for us really makes you, and right there you're talking about how you're focused on your awareness, you're being very mindful, you're thinking about there's the decision making occurring. So there's a lot of, and it's helping develop your nervous system. There's a lot of stuff going on that we need to grasp and utilize in our culture more.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Because some places they want to have better test scores, so what do? Oh, more study. But people got to realize more that we're very multifactorial and there's all this feedback and we're very complex and complicated. So there's stuff that happens to us that isn't strictly linear, like more study doesn't mean better grades. We got to stop it and sleep and eat and rest and spend time with friends and move. And there's these unexpected feedback mechanisms that occur. Yeah,
I think that it really, what has to shift is the philosophy that underpins our culture. Is it really that simple? Do we view ourselves as utilities, as just problem solvers, or do we view ourselves as organisms in an environment, in an interconnected web of ecology?
Nice.
And a lot of people really don't fundamentally believe the latter. They don't think it exists. They want to live in the abstract world of humans, in a human-centric world. And it's deep philosophy. It's going to take a long time to break, but it's going to have to happen if we want to preserve this world and our own self, and live a good quality of life and really actualize our potential as human beings. So that's just what it is. I think that the philosophical side of things, we try to make movement a gateway into that. We don't try to push that on people. It's there if you want it. I'm hoping that I see more and more books, research, all that sort of support this idea that people are changing and starting to understand biology a little more, which is great.
Yeah. Better farming, more farmers markets, better movement quality, some good trends going on in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for your audience that like this type of stuff, permaculture, one of the most beautiful concepts.
Yeah.
Same thing as what we're doing in MovNat. It's mimicking nature, mimicking principles of ecology and systems to create sustainable agriculture that produces more value and is inherently a net positive human footprint on the environment. It's in a lot of ways actualizing human potential, I think. And there's concepts out there. It's taken a long time because it's just the inertia of ideology, I guess.
Yeah, and Melanie, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just thinking for a future topic sometime or another discussion. I'd like to get this from the macro into the micro a bit if we could, because as a music teacher, I want to pick your brain a bit about what do you think about that micro physical element of music where you're working really carefully with your fingers and your posture, and because it's a very sort of sit and focus. And so I just want to see, if you had any recommendations, and it might just be another conversation sometime down the road. But because we're talking a lot about all the very large movements, of course, of the body, but I work just so many hours a day with kids and adults trying to help them fine tune their movements. And so I was just thinking sometime it'd be great to talk about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a whole other can of worms for sure. But
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because there's the big movements, that what we call the gross patterns, but there's the micro movements that are very specific, they're very task specific, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. So good. Well, I've learned a lot today, for sure. Thank you so much, Danny. This has been great.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor. I'm so happy to have to be on your podcast. And Michael, I've so appreciated working with you on understanding philosophy and reasoning and logic a lot more. For those of you listening, it's a fantastic teacher. It's a lot of skills that I think need to be made more even understood. Like, what is logic? What is reasoning? And how can it actually be taught? It's not something that's always inherent, especially in our culture where we're kind of just taught to take things as they are so we can get higher test scores. So can't say enough about what you do.
Thank you.
And yeah, I look forward to learning more about you, Melanie. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for taking the time today. This is great. So much to gain.
Any last words, Danny?
Well, I think that it's easy to stay on the conceptual level of everything. We're always sort of barraged with new ideas and concepts and paradigms and big ideas or ideas designed to exploit your fears. And I think MovNat falls outside of that category. It's not so much an idea as a simple, basic practice. It's just getting in all the vitamins of movement that exist out there for human beings. I'm not going to try to sell you on it anymore, but if you want to live a full, rich life,
Agreed.
We got to start paradigms, and we just got to start getting back to our roots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you say, I think people can, even if they're in a kind of prison environment at school, they can work on their breathing. They can unobtrusively move their shoulders, like sit on one leg, put it down, sit on the other, instead of just having both legs on the floor. All these little unobtrusive things people could do to move better. And we need it for things like in Houston, it floods. We need to be able to deal with like flooding and helping people and moving furniture and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Everyone has, car accidents sometimes or breakdowns. We need to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, and just let your kids outside and let them play and let them express their own epigenetic potential. Let them, I think that's a huge thing. If you're a kid, if you're of that age, don't feel shameful or guilty about doing it. Just go play in the woods, build a fort,
Yeah.
These are going to have far-reaching benefits that are going to transcend any particular equation you learn or history fact you remember. It's going to enhance the quality of your life and your ability to think by being out there. It's all interconnected.
Yeah. So yeah, that's some good stuff. I like that. The fact that we need to start thinking more biologically and be aware that we need to in the first place, and as you say, Danny, start really thinking outside the box, as people say, and really connecting things.
Yeah, I think me and you are due for a discussion.
Yeah, always
we
overdue.
geek out on this all night. I love to talk about the future world of biologists and and that type of thinking versus physics and all that. But in due time.
So we hope, folks, there's some good information in here for you, and we'll put some show notes, links in the show notes. We will put show notes in the show notes too. But thank you for listening, and thank you very much, Danny, for your time. It's like great discussion, and yeah, there's so much more we got to talk about. I wish we could go on for like 6 more hours, but
yeah, right.
Yeah. But, all right. So, anything else, Melanie?
No, I'm just sneezing. Yeah, no, this was great. Thank you so much. I learned a ton. So, gosh, I hope everyone else did too. I'm sure they did. And more questions later.
All right.
All right,
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Bye.
Guys.